The knife is a Cold Steel Voyager large clip point. Spyderco is my favorite brand. However, there are a few Cold Steels that I really like. The Voyager series, I'm a big fan of. The 4-inch Voyager obviously mimics the Recon 1 series. However, I'm really a fan of the stonewash. I'm a fan of the texture. I'm a fan of the price point with the AUS 10 A steel on it currently. Now the Voyager series, they have the small and they have the extra large. Now I'm a fan of the Tanto blade shape, especially on the large size. I see a lot of misconception about the value of Tanto blades, at least in my opinion. Figured I'd offer my 2 cents on where I see the value of Tantos. Now, clip points are probably my favorite blade shape traditionally. I think I would take a clip point over a drop point, and more often than not, I would probably take a Tanto over a Wharncliffe. And I know people would be crazy to hear why, but hear me out for a few seconds. Now, generally with Spydercos, you always get this finger choil in here for people to sneak up. Generally, I'm not a fan of that. What I like to do, because they always say, hey, detail work, you can move up closer. I'm generally not a fan of that. What I'll do is I'll put my traffic finger in the choil area, my index finger across the spine, and I'll do a draw cut. To me, that's detail work as much as far as my uses are concerned. I'm not trying to cut little circles or whatever people actually like to do. Generally, my hand is usually in the back, okay? And I usually try to put my thumb partially on the jimping and partially on the smooth side of the spine. I don't want to be pushing in too hard because your thumb's going to get that imprint on there. And when it comes to hard cutting, I don't find that to be the case. And especially if I'm having to really dig in, that's telling me my knife is dull and I need to actually sharpen it anyways. Okay. Now, with the Tanto, specifically this 4-inch Voyager, when I decide to do that, you see this point right here? That's amplifying the pressure and pushing down. Think of like a glass breaker. A glass breaker is concentrated in a specific area. Okay? So when I'm pushing this down, I'm getting a specific point with a lot of weight on there, digging in to do that detail cut. Now, if you're carrying 4-inch, little over 3.5-inch blades, you may not be doing that all much, but it's something to consider. To me, I think that is definitely ideal if you want to do detail cut work. Now, I like my Tantos 3.5 to 4-inch blade lengths. This is obviously super fun to carry. Now remember, you actually are losing 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch. I guess it really depends on the Tanto itself to actually have that point. So there is some sacrifice that's actually being made, but if you got a 4-inch blade, I really don't think it's going to be all sacrificial all that much. Now, when you're doing those draw cuts, a lot of people use these little box cutters to actually do draw cuts. There's utility knives you could actually use. Okay, I'm just using this for demonstration purposes, but this is a one-trick pony. It only does draw cuts. Okay, it really doesn't do any sweeping type of cuts that you get off of something like a clip point. Okay, even this medium Vaquero. I really wish they would make a large Vaquero, but this is probably one of my oldest knives in my collection with the AUS 8 steel. Now, when you think about that, okay, most people, they believe Tantos are really designed just for stabbing. Now, having this finger choil right here is ideal for stabbing because your hand is continually going down. And if this choil is not here, your chances of running your hand against the actual cutting edge, it becomes dangerous in my opinion. Which is why when I look for Tantos, I definitely want a pronounced finger choil in there to actually protect me from actually stabbing. Now the Tanto, obviously with the cold steel, you see that spine thickness, it continues all the way down. Now remember, you still got this point right here, okay? So obviously for me, it's 3 phases that I can go through to actually create the stabbing effect when I want to do that. When you have something like this sage right here, to me, this is really not designed for stabbing, okay? To me, with the curvature of the blade, I think I would play more to the strength than that. Then again, I'm not stabbing things constantly, but it does occasionally come up where I have to do that, and just the normalcy of life where, sometimes you actually want to start a cut. Now with the Tanto, I got the option of pushing down with the concentrated force of this point right here. Now if you don't sharpen the Tanto correctly, it's actually just going to form like a regular drop point. It's going to be curvature, so that's why sharpening a Tanto and keeping that point intact is super important. Another thing that you can do to actually start cuts, or whatever, you could do what they call snap cuts. You could actually rotate and slam it down because this point is actually going to penetrate very well. You got a lot of steel, a lot of support, and not a lot of weight. And depending on how big of a chopping motion, it's not like an axe, but what you're doing is you're concentrating the impact force in that area. So that would be my second option as opposed to doing the draw cuts before I would actually do a full-blown stab in the material. So now I got options on a specific cut style that would happen whenever. So it leaves me options. Now, the cold steel Voyager specifically, it's not a straight line. It's got some curvature in there, which is actually going to increase cutting just like how a clip point would. Now, like I said before, I like clip points more than drop points. So having a 4-inch Tanto blade with that curvature in there is going to open a lot of versatility, sacrificing a 1/4 of an inch, maybe, for the options when it comes to actual stabbing, starting cuts, and detail work. Now, having something like this is extremely fun to carry. I was actually stabbing a bunch of barrels with this one. It is capable of carrying, or at least for me it is, and it's just fun to carry something they call a pocket sword every now and then. Now, the Spyderco Shaman, this happens to be the S90V version, burlap micarta. I never liked this blade shape. To me, it doesn't flow correctly with the actual handle itself. I'd like to actually have this in a tanto blade shape because I think that would accentuate this as a folder. If you took out the pocket clip, took out the compression lock, and made this into a fixed blade, I think that would be perfectly fine. But as a folder, I'd want this to be a little tanto, like one of those short stubby looking guys, instead of the drop point that it actually is. To me, I think a tanto blade shape just makes the most sense on the Shaman. A lot of people like it. I think it's okay the way it is, but I think I would prefer a tanto blade on there. That's just me personally. Now, I'm not saying that tanto is the best blade shape. However, if you got a 4-inch cutting edge, I think you could actually sacrifice some of the tip strength and still be able to actually do everything that you really want in a larger folder. Now, tantos, I think they're misunderstood. I'm not saying that they're the best. I would say find a decent model that appeals to you. Now, I know Cold Steel, they do a great job with their tantos. I'm a fan of the texture, the overall feel. The only downside about these Voyagers, I mean, you could always find them on sale, but is the pocket clip. You need to bend it out or even sand down some of the scales itself. I really like the texture. It seems like it locks in your hand. Any size, medium, large, extra large. I think I paid like $50 for this, maybe 45. But to me, this is one of the best non-Spyderco knives that I actually own. I'm a fan of it. Every now and then I definitely carry some tantos, but I just feel like there's a lot of misconception on what the value actually is and what you can get out of, some of the tantos. Now, generally, I'd like to carry it with something else, but I could get by with just carrying a regular tanto. I mean, this is only AUS 10. To me, I just think it's just ignorance. People not understanding that snap cut is really amazing. Detail work. I don't understand why I would want to have like a big belly when I could actually have a concentrated point that's going to do all the work for me. A lot of people say detail work. I'm like, to me, it's small draw cuts. That's detail work to me. But each his own. Obviously, you can carry something like this. But to me, I think tantos, they open up a lot of versatility. And I'm not saying get everything tanto. Maybe a couple tantos in your collection. And I think it's just a versatile blade shape that just shouldn't be overlooked.